Our team.
Are we ready?
Okay, I'm here. I'm in my assigned seat.
I would like to call the Linn-Mar Community School Board work session to order. Can you please determine the quorum?
Buckles.
Here.
Eisenberg.
Here.
Lawson. Maury.
Here.
Nelson.
Here?
Walt.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Quorum is present at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
To adopt the agenda as presented.
Second. Okay, Barry and Rachel. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, passes. Okay, today during our work session, we're going to do an update on the Return to Learn plan. Along with that, I just want to say before we begin that we as a board are here as partners with everybody that's going to present. And if we have questions, it's meant to clarify. And if you don't have the information or something, just say, don't have the information and I'll get it for you or something. We're not here for any other reason than to find out what's been going on and what we can look forward to. And so with that, let's have, is it Nathan who's going to start or who will begin for us today? Guess not, Nathan's over there, sorry.
I'll jump in quick.
Sorry about that, okay, Bob Reed, please.
Before Bob starts too, I'll just kind of want to echo Sandra's comments about it was great to start school today. So you're going to get a really kind of a quick update on how things look to start the school year across all levels, elementary, middle school, high school, and online tonight. Even some pictures from today as well. So some of the things are pretty fresh off of the digital camera world as well. So at least give you a sample of what school looked like today, since we can't be as open and welcoming as we usually are in our school day too. So hope that'll be beneficial for not just the board, but for the public as we share that. And we're going to start with Mr. Reed to talk about our new online program this year.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here to present some information about our online program, especially PK6. I want to provide you some information about organization, our schedule, how we supported teachers, and just give you a brief overview of what's happening in the world of online education. So to begin with, I shared this quote with the staff in my first email, and it's a quote that really resonates with me, and it goes, "Don't let the pursuit of the instructionally perfect prevent you from reaping the rewards of the instructional possible." And this year we're going to have a lot of instructional possibilities. We know that our day one is not perfect, but we're going to continually strive to improve our practice and make better learning opportunities for our students. So here was launched today. So here we have Megan O'Brien and Terry Stryker launching this morning in their classroom. And then we have Tammy Tomash and Kevin Midden also. So those are pictures. Tammy was from this afternoon. The other three were shared with me earlier today as we launched into this endeavor. And it's been a really interesting journey. And I want to start, even before I go into more detailed information, thanking the staff that I work with. They have been completely awesome and really responded positively to the challenge ahead. This would be something, if I could go back in time, I would like to have 3 months to prepare, but I'll give you a little bit of the outline of our timeline. So I want to thank the staff that's out there listening right now. They've been rock stars. We've done a really good job just to get to day one right now. So let's start with some online option. Thinking about the organization of this program, I'll give you a little bit of background on the timeline. We generated a master list of students from the application form that was found on the district website, and that had been going on for some time, and then the storm hit, so we extended that deadline, I think, until August 21st is when we extended that for families. Well, the afternoon of the 21st, I met with Shannon and Nathan, and they said, "Hey, Bob, would you like to be the principal of our PK12 or our PK6 virtual school?" And I said, "Of course I would. It's going to be a great challenge, and that's something that's really, well, online learning and digital learning and blended learning is right up my alley. So yes, I wanted to accept this challenge." The next week, we had teachers placed and letters sent out to staff the week of on August 27th. On the 28th, I sent my first staff email and welcome to all of them, and I used that quote from Popham to kind of preface what we're doing. The next Monday, I supplied a list for their professional learning specifically for the online teachers. We as Teaching and Learning had built a strong matrix of all the different learning opportunities, and I didn't want to override some things that were already scheduled in their building. but yet we needed to find time for them to collaborate and time for some additional training when it came to virtual online instruction. 9/4, or September 4th, we generated student lists and sections, and I did that because I wanted to try and keep kids together in cohorts. So if there was a group of Bowman Woods students, I didn't want one student from Bowman Woods with someone across the district. I tried to pair them or keep them in cohort groups so they would see familiar faces, just as they would in the classroom setting. So then we did our first staff assignment with that. 9/5, we did the waiting list additions, and then we connected students to teachers in Power School just last week on Wednesday and Thursday. And then today was our first day. I know that from my standpoint, we could have pushed out a lot more information to parents, such as Schoology and things like that. But in my mind, I didn't want to push out Schoology information to parents when none of their students would appear because they hadn't been rostered in Power School. So if I logged in as a student, I went into Schoology, nothing would be there for me. Once we got all that information in Power School, we pushed it out. So if we think about the schedule for our online learners, it's divided into an AM and PM cohort. And we based our instructional time off recommendations from Grantwood AEA and digital learning. So our K2 students have 90 minutes of core instruction. Our 3-4 have 120, and 5-6 have 130 minutes of core instruction. That is not all of their day, however. Their morning session and the afternoon session, there's time built in for individual support, small group instruction, community circles, and activities that they would normally do as far as specials also. So the morning cohort, there's that core instructional time, but then there's room for other things with that. Our academic focus, if you think about our cohort, and this will be continued in the elementary, middle, and high school, really thinking about how we can focus on grade level content and priority standards. Not only priority standards for the current grade level, but thinking back from March 13th to where we ended the school year, some of those things that we may need to revisit with our students and focus on those. So when I'm thinking academics, especially for our online students, I'm really thinking about a very heavy emphasis on mathematics and literacy, and we will do our best to integrate social studies and science in those. There's a lot of great things from FOSS or our VAST Academy out at Grantwood that we can bring in for the science, so we don't necessarily have to have a science experiment set up. And the same thing for social studies if we're thinking about literacy application, reading history. That's great nonfiction for our students, and that's a different type of reading for them. We will also administer the FAST test within the district window for all the students, and we will progress monitor those students that need it as necessary. Support for teachers. As I said, our staff has been truly awesome. There's been rough spots, but they've been very resilient. They're truly a collaborative effort, and they do a great job of learning together and doing those things. I would also like to thank the teacher leaders that have helped us get ready for our virtual instruction. Our instructional coaches and our technology integration coaches they've been awesome. We wouldn't be as far as we were right now without those people. And I would also like to mention one person by name, Samantha Dykes. She is our online coach, and she has been fantastic. She set up Zoom meetings, provided resources, shared stuff in Schoology. It's just been great. So think about a normal teacher returning to work, or if this was a regular year, you would have all that professional learning that you normally would, but our online people also, we had Schoology, which was a new learning management system for everyone, but then also we have the online education, and that's what I want to focus on just a little bit here. One of the things that I was able to collaborate with the Grantwood AEA digital learning team was to provide specific instruction or professional learning about online instruction. So it was a combination of the digital learning team and our Linn-Mar Technology Integration coaches, and we really focused on that continuous learning field guide. I'm going to click on that, see if it takes us to the guide here. So this is the site that's housed at Grantwood, and there's just a ton of great information and support that can be found in it. Now, when we did this, we broke the teachers down by grade band level, because if I was a kindergarten teacher, I may not need the same professional development as an intermediate teacher when it comes to online learning. So we broke the team down into different bands, PK2, a 3-4, and a 5-6. And when we were working with this, we used there we go, we'll go back to this. We used 2 days, September 8th and September 9th. September 8th was focused on designing online instruction. So that was from 8:30 to 11:15 in the morning. They were in and out of sessions led by Grantwood Digital Learning and Linn-Mar technology coaches, and it was just focusing on delivering online instruction. The afternoon, they had time to collaborate on their team, start the planning process, but the people at Grantwood AEA kept a Zoom link open so you could Zoom in at any time and meet with the consultants at your particular grade level. And then the next day, on September 9th, we talked about the delivery of online instruction. And the same format, 8:15 to 11:15, with Zoom meetings open later on. This is I didn't link this in there, but this is everything that came out of that work. The agenda, the additional hyperlinks, Zoom kit, Schoology toolkit, breakout rooms, designing online instructional slide deck, continuous learning field guide, and all the different tools that they may have at their fingertips to get ready for online instruction. So it's been quite the endeavor. It's been a very tight time frame, but today I was amazed it went off fairly well. With the number of devices that we had deployed for our students, there were relatively few technology problems, speaking generally. I know I was fielding questions at my desk as far as passwords, connecting, iPad issues, and things like that. And I know that our teachers and our tech integration coaches and instructional coaches were still fielding those questions also. So again, the teacher leadership program has provided a lot of support for our teachers, a lot of support for me, and we launched today, and it felt really good to get some of those pictures that were shared from a coach, seeing the interaction and starting to build relationships with our students. So it's been interesting to say the least. It's been hectic to say the least, but it's a great endeavor. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but that we will be. Give us a quarter, and we're going to be so much more improved as we hone and refine our practice continually. So that's the end of my slide deck. So if you have questions, you can give them to me before I pass it on to Carla at the elementary level.
Question? Do you have
I
one?
just have a little. One is the waiting list option. What was that? Was there a waiting list for the virtual?
Yes, Nathan, would you help me with that, please?
Yeah, we had a lot of people after the 21st that were still, I didn't have power, I didn't have internet, and so we just put them on a waiting list through like whenever that September,
Yeah.
the Friday was in September, just so that we could make sure that we still were responsive to families that had those technical issues. So we had maybe 50 kids that were after the deadline, and I would say probably of those, 25 or 30 were 7 to 12 grades.
Yes.
That didn't need to go in class anymore.
Okay.
So Bob and I then worked with 15 to 20 kids that we needed to place in our sections that we had assigned for virtual.
And were all of those kids able to get a
Yeah,
spot
everybody
virtually?
was able to get off the week.
Okay, wonderful.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit. I know in my email to parents I said that if you had a particular situation for AM and PM cohort, we've honored almost all of those up to this point.
Okay.
Because I understand work schedules, and if 2 kids are online in the morning and 1 is in the afternoon, we've done our best to do those. So anyone that has requested, if it was within reason, we've placed them in an appropriate cohort.
Okay. And then the other thing I was just going to ask was about Schoology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a little bit confused on this. I talked to John Christian the other day about it because he's one of my kids' OCM teachers this year. And he did give me some more information that, helped me to understand it a little bit more, but I'm still like confused about Power School and Schoology and if and when those are going to come together. Are we going to be logging into Power School and Schoology, or is Power School becoming Schoology? I'm just still confused about it.
Great question. That's a wonderful
That's great.
question. And I'll try to clarify the best I can.
Okay.
When we first made the move to go to Schoology, of course, the presenter said it was a seamless integration between our Power School SIS and our learning management system. Well, we found.
Maybe not?
Maybe not.
Seamless.
Maybe not at all. And really, the biggest stickler for us right now is all the work we have done with standards-based instruction and standards-based grading. Everything in Schoology right now is points-based, and we don't want to go that way because as a parent, I wouldn't want to see points here in Schoology and then see a proficiency scale mark in Power School Learning. So we're keeping them separate for now.
Okay.
But I want to think back to March 13th until the end of the academic year last year, and the communication that came my way is that parents were being bombarded by, go to Google Classroom, go to my class dojo, here's a link for this. So if I was a parent and I had kids at different levels, I might receive numerous emails. We want Schoology to be the landing spot for teaching and learning and instruction.
Okay.
So if I know, as a student, I know that all of my things will be housed in Schoology. When I log in, I should see the courses that I'm associated with and being able to access the different tools that are housed there.
Okay, so then does each teacher have their own Schoology page where they're going to post homework assignments and that kind of stuff?
They do.
Okay, all right, well, I'm just going to have to log in and navigate it a little bit and see, and is the idea that at some point Schoology will be using standards-based grading and that will eliminate Power School, or are they going to be operating in tandem for the foreseeable future?
I would love it if we could use standards-based grading and that would port into our Power School system. Because at the high school level, those are historical grades and we have to keep them housed in our student information system.
Okay.
And so that's a very important piece.
Okay.
But for teacher ease right now, it would be awesome if I was teaching mathematics, I could go into Schoology, do my assessment standards-based and have that push into my Power School gradebook.
And it does not work that way?
Not right now.
Okay, so then do you not look at Power School for grades now?
You would
You're
look
looking-
at Power School for grades, Schoology for the assignments, and how to interact with the teaching and learning process.
Okay.
I just add one more thing. Schoology, or part of Return to Learn, the state had to identify a learning management system. So Power School, again, houses all of our information, attendance, grades, transcripts, all that stuff. The state made us select one of 3 options for a learning management system. These we have to go to virtual.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is when all that stuff gets pushed to an online, you won't have to click in 20 different places. It'll be housed in Schoology. And we have to report to the state that this is what we're using. And Schoology was our.
Okay. Is that going to be widely used for right now then? Do you know what I mean? Since we're not all virtual, is that just being used really more for the virtual students, or is that something that the hybrid students are going to be using as well? I'm sorry, I don't mean to like take up the time. I'm just trying to understand it more than anything.
No, that's a great question. I would say the hybrid students will be using it also.
Okay.
And our goal for the hybrid students is to make sure that teachers instruct the students when they do have those face-to-face moments at the start of the year in the hybrid, that this is how you get in, this is what you're going to see, and this is how you navigate the platform.
Okay.
And from an instructional standpoint, we try to standardize what our folder organization looks like. So if I log in as an elementary student, the folders are organized in a similar fashion, whether I'm on site or whether I'm off site or wherever I'm in. So a second grader would generally see the same screen across the district, the way that it's organized and how to access those things.
Okay, so is Schoology something that's more like a student interface or more student interface, and then Power School maybe more the parent
Yes,
interface?
exactly.
Okay, that's great. I wonder just if we can, I know that's kind of hard to describe in an email or a written communication, you know what I mean? Like that back and forth is a lot more effective for understanding it. And so hopefully during Lion Learning, we can hit on that, because I know that I've had a lot of feedback that there's some confusion. People think that Schoology is replacing Power School, and that's where they need to go to. So if we could just, figure out a way to make sure that we're communicating that to
Yeah, we can
parents.
communicate that, whether it's through emails or building updates or Lion Learning, like you mentioned, various ways as that becomes more of our, like you said, student access point for all the curriculum and learning pieces. So,
Okay.
yep, I hope parents understand what that
Thank
looks
you.
like.
I feel like a new person. I finally understand this.
Britt, did you have some questions?
Yes, I have 2 questions and then a comment, so I'll be quick. In theory, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say I'm quick. I have a question about the supports that exist for online teachers. We all know that they have double the caseload, and I get that they're teaching half at a time, but they're still tracking 40 to 50 students in terms of grades and all that stuff. So what are we doing to support those students? Because in theory, they have the same amount of time an in-person teacher does to get through twice as much student work. So how are we supporting those teachers in that capacity?
Well, I think number one, it's our focus on those priority academic standards. With guidance from Carla and Erica at the elementary and intermediate level, which I'm associated with those, we need to focus on, I know there might be 10 priority standards, but the focus on 5 and a laser-like look at those and think about how we're going to report on those standards to students. One of the things, that's a great question, one of the things I'm struggling with is figuring out how to carve out additional support for online learning, professional learning for those teachers, because if they have a morning cohort, afternoon cohort, there's really not a good block of time to get that done for those. So that is something that I'm really wrestling with, because I agree wholeheartely that they do need that support ongoing so that their practice improves.
Okay, well, I'm glad it's on your radar.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
I understand why the caseload is what it is. I'm not questioning that. I just want to make sure that those teachers, some of which aren't used to having, all of the subjects that they're having twice as much, I want to make sure we're supporting them and making them as successful as they can be in that support.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
Okay. My second question kind of relates, and maybe someone else is going to cover it when we talk about in-person, but the online learning, online instruction training that the online teachers went through. It's my understanding the rest of our staff that are teaching in person have not had that training, correct?
Correct.
That was, okay. So what happens when an in-person class has to transition to virtual learning for 2 weeks and those teachers have not received this instruction?
I've got a great answer for that.
I would love a great answer.
I've got a great answer for that. In fact, it's one of the people that I gave a shout out to, Samantha Dykes, who's our on-site instructional / tech coach. She's already developing like a guide for that because of all the things that we've learned along the way, and she's going to be ready. If there's teachers that need to go online, we can provide that support right to them. So Samantha's designing some instruction and some professional learning that we can basically pinpoint. If a 4th grade teacher needs a quarantine, but yet they can teach from home, we can provide that support for them right away.
Okay, because my concern is, this is all happening so fast that we find out tomorrow that we have to quarantine a 2nd grade classroom. Do we have to wait a day or 2 for that to transition because we have to teach the teacher how to teach online? Or is it like, how does that, I'm just concerned that there's going to be delays in that transition because we weren't able to train everyone on online instruction.
I think with the instructional and technology integration coach support that's offered, we could get that person up and running very, very quickly, if not the next day. At least, well, let me back up to Rachel's question, the idea of housing our instructional materials in Schoology. Even if I'm on site and I keep doing that, man, I go virtual, it's like, hey kids, here's my link to live instruction. You know where everything's housed in Schoology. This is what I want you to do. These are the assignments, and this is the way that we're going to communicate.
Okay. So those are my 2 questions. My comment, and you guys are going to hear this a lot from me tonight, even if there's not an answer for parents, I think communicating where you're at in the process is incredibly important. My son is doing virtual learning. I emailed you, you emailed me back. I really appreciated that. But the not knowing creates more anxiety than the we don't have an answer but we're working on it communication. So the more that we can communicate with parents that, I guess my example would be, Schoology isn't ready for you to log into, but this is the platform we're going to use. It's going to be the virtual classroom. We're going to get you more information at the end of the week. That would have been great.
Okay.
Instead of just a week of, I didn't hear anything until like Thursday or Friday of last week. And I'm a planner, and I understand that there's no plan here and that we're all just figuring it out, and I'm working through that. But it would help parents that aren't, I'm a board member, and so I know more of what's going on. If I'm a parent that is just sitting there hoping and waiting and I don't know anything, any kind of communication that says this is where we're at in the process, we're going to get more information to you in a couple of days. That would be so much more helpful, I think.
Okay.
So,
And that's something I can speak to, that it's definitely a priority of ours going forward.
okay.
This summer's been such a unique summer of just everything shifting and changing all the time, and trying to, sometimes we're guilty of, we want to wait till we have everything in place and then communicate it. It's just more the natural
Sure.
response to things, but it's something we can certainly work on to make sure, just to communicate, well, here's where we are right now, more information to come, or more updates on that across the system. I guess something we
Yeah,
can
and
still work on this fall, because now the school year started, is to continuing to give updates. That way it makes total sense.
And I totally understand the natural instinct to wait until we have the answers to share them, but we're in such a crazy time, and there's so much anxiety built around the virus, and are we in school, aren't we in school, what does it look like? Parents can't go in and see the classrooms because our buildings are closed to visitors. Any kind of information we can communicate when we have it, just updating them, is going to relieve that anxiety and make them feel better about sending their kids to school, or better about knowing that they're keeping their kids home and there is online instruction, it is going to happen. Like, just, it takes away some of that anxiety and makes it easier on everybody else, I think. So that's my comment, and I'm done for now.
I would just say that I echo what Britt said, and I think people understand that right now things are changing, and they're changing at a rapid pace. I think people are okay hearing information and knowing that it may change, but again, I think in this situation, the more communication, the better. Honestly, I know I have felt a little bit in the dark, and I know that in my position, I know more than some, and you know, it does cause anxiety. It does. And I totally admit that I'm just sort of an anxious person by nature, but like the unknown and kind of the waiting is just sometimes, you know, it's too much for people, certain people like myself. So anyway, I would agree with you, Britt.
And I'm
I
going to take
think
back.
all of us
I have one
are
more
there.
question.
And I think you've heard that, and I hope you've heard that, and that will be acted on by everyone. It'd be awesome. What else did you?
I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. So it's kind of piggybacking off of Rachel's question about the wait list. I've had several parents that are now concerned that we did a bait and switch, and now, you know, you can't get into virtual without a medical note, and that we didn't tell them that we were going to do that. We just changed it on the website. Can someone talk about that a little bit?
I can touch base on that one, because honestly, the deadline we originally set, I believe, was August 7th, I think was our original deadline. And then we extended it because of derecho, and then we extended it again as people continue to recover, which made total sense to do. Essentially, we've set the deadline now as passed.
Right,
So
I'm
we're
not
trying to hold
questioning the
that
deadline.
piece of it.
The
But we also
website-
realize there are unique situations that may change because of COVID and people's health situations, which may then need to have a adjustment made in their learning format. So that becomes the exception to the deadline right now, is if there's a legitimate medical reason that needs to be considered, then we would certainly look at those options to see if that's necessary. The challenge becomes, we can't continue to have kids going back and forth between the online and the in-person, and it's just really hard on our staffing decisions and on our staff that are trying to operate in those modes right now. So
I understand all of that. I think what threw people is on the website it said, here's the deadline. After the deadline, you can still apply, but you're not guaranteed immediate placement. And then
Correct.
that was changed to, the deadline has passed, you cannot switch to virtual without a medical note. I guess I don't see the need for the change, because if you can't guarantee immediate placement, then why change the language? If someone applies and you can't get them into the class, that still fits that policy. I just feel like the way the language was changed and what seemed to be right before school started threw parents for a loop and made them maybe unnecessarily upset when we could have just, I don't know. I just thought it was just a very quick, odd, uncommunicated change. The deadline is
we're
fine.
just trying to clarify what the reason for, if something would get in after the deadline, that was why.
Okay.
So.
Now I'm done.
Anyone else with questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yeah, go.
Hey, I understand the anxiety and stuff that Britt was talking about with the parents. seeing that through my own granddaughter who's in 6th grade, but yeah, she's in Minnesota, but it's the same kind of stuff. We still got to look at our teachers as far as the support that the staff gets, and so I'm glad that that communication needs to be ongoing. As the EOR of the group, my concern would be in dealing with staff. We don't want them to become so overwhelmed that at the end of this year, hey, I'm done, I'm out of here. And it hasn't even been hit yet, but I know it's coming. Those of us that have been in the classroom and stuff like that, the shortage of substitutes is going to hit every single district, I think, in the state. And simply because not only the COVID thing, but everything else that goes along with the virtual learning. So I think it's really important to communicate that support staff, because I think, you know, whether it's fifth and 6th grade and stuff where I'm hearing stuff from, the anxiety level of not only the parents, but the teachers, and if they've never been in there before or have not taught certain subjects, that anxiety level is heightened, and then you combine that with all the communications that they have to do, whether it's grades like Rachel was talking about or something else like that. That just adds one more, and I just don't want any teacher getting to the plimsoll point and say, hey, enough is enough, and you know, so the amount of support that we can get from everybody, you know, I think is going to help to say, hey, we hear you, we're still working on it, it is new, everything is new to us, but don't hold things in, reach out to us, and we can work through that, and I think that's really an important communication.
I absolutely agree, and that's why I asked about the support for the online teachers with the double the class load, but in-person teachers just as much. All of this is going to add extra pressure to them, and I mean, we need them to be successful, and anything that we can do administratively to help them, I absolutely agree with.
Agreed, and I'll end my presentation on this. I'm always a very positive person, but sometimes this task was crazy at times. But every time I had a staff meeting, they actually lifted my optimism to a higher level, interacting with the staff, even though we're doing it virtually. So I know they're doing that with each other. I know they provided that lift for me, and we'll continue down that positive path.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Time for the elementary version. Wanted to start tonight with this picture here. I saw this morning when I was at Novak. I thought that was super cute. So I didn't know if everybody was able to get out and about, but I thought they might like to see that as well. So I think kids were happy to be back. I know teachers were. So as we start, we're going to start with the academic priorities at the elementary level. And grade level content is going to be our academic priority. Now we know we missed content as we ended the year last year. And so we're going to talk about how we'll address that in a little bit here too. But one of the things that we're going to utilize is the state screening assessments. You guys have heard them as FAST. So we have those for both literacy and for math. Math is new to us. We've not chosen to administer what we are going to this year. Math, the one we're doing in math is new. So, that's a little bit different. And I think that will give us some better data than what we had gotten in the past. And the screening data is going to cast a pretty wide net for kids so that we can catch anybody. We don't want to drop anybody. We want to make sure we catch them. So the screening data does a pretty wide net. And then from that point, we have some flow charts that we have created, and I can show you those too. I did not link them, but I brought them. So basically, if a student would show an area of concern, what might we do for that student in both literacy and math? So that addresses the diagnostic assessments that we would give kids, as well as then the interventions that they would receive. So that is new in math, not new in literacy, but we've tightened it up a little bit in literacy as well this year. Tried to provide some additional resources for teachers who are providing interventions as we go through that. We also, in May of last year, we had teachers work together on one of the professional development days virtually and identify, like in the 4 content areas, what are the, I'm going to use the word big, like 3 to 5 big standards in each content area that are critical. So if I'm a first grade teacher and I know that my first grade students didn't get the 4th quarter in literacy, what would I want to make sure that second grade teacher knew or hit on as they moved forward? So we did that in May, and then what we'll do is as we go through that, so going back to the first bullet where grade level content is our academic priority, so we're going to kind of tuck those standards in throughout this course of the year, and I can provide you an example of that. So let's say in 3rd grade math, in 4th quarter, we would typically do a unit on fractions. We did not get to that unit on fractions. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to take 6 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks, whatever the unit would be in 4th grade, teach the whole 3rd grade unit, and then because then we're going to run out of time for the 4th grade unit. So as we teach the 4th grade unit, we're going to be mindful of those standards they've missed and review them throughout. So kind of weave them through and intertwine them. And so the teachers have that spreadsheet that we had done last May. So let's see here, make sure I don't miss anything. Our professional, so do you guys want questions on each? So as I talk about the academic, do you want to ask some questions on the academic, or do you want me to go through them all first?
I'm fine with you going through them all,
Okay.
and we
Let's
can
go
ask
through
questions at the end.
So the next piece then is the professional learning. And so I know you had some information about the social emotional learning they did, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of the academic pieces of that. So we had something called grade level presentations or grade level meetings, whatever you want to call them. Basically, those are the updates on curriculum and instruction at the elementary level. So that's where we provided updates on what is the curriculum work that we've done since we were together last. What are the updates that we have? One of the things that we unveiled is a new revamped All Things Elementary, which is a website for our teachers to use. And if you would like, I can show you that as well. That is kind of a one-stop shop for teachers as we think about, and part of it is that communication, like where do I find this? I can't remember who sent that email. I can't remember this. So they can go there and they can find all of the information that they need. And I think this addresses a little bit of what Britt said too. So for example, we know right now our priority is those screening assessments when we have our kids face-to-face. We need to do those as soon as our window opens, which is next week. Literacy is our priority, and then math and so forth. But it is a possibility that we need to go online. So what is in that resource would be an example. There's a link or a page in there developed for administration of fast assessment online. So I can, if I can manage my PowerPoint here. Bob was pretty smooth with it. Let's see how smooth I am. So this is the landing page for it. And so you see up here, so like there's fast assessments, and then there's guidance on remote administration. So lots of information for teachers, a document that we've created to help them if they have to administer anything remotely, that support is all there for them to have. So right now it's not really relevant to our face-to-face teachers because our priority is getting the students in and face-to-face, but it's there if they were to need it at a drop of a hat. They could do that. So, some other things that we did, obviously, student success is a data warehouse from the Department of Ed that is new to our teachers this year. That is a requirement. That warehouse will house academic data. Right now it houses only literacy. It will expand to math, but right now it houses only literacy, attendance, and behavior data. So it is kind of a, well, for lack of a better word, it's a data warehouse. So you can see, a student would have like a page. So I could see all the information I wanted to see about student A in terms of their literacy performance, their attendance and their behavior. And that's where we'll track all their progress monitoring for literacy as well. And eventually math will flow into that when the DE turns it on. Obviously, there was professional learning on Schoology, and then there was a lot of professional learning also on social emotional for both staff and students. Some of the other things, so as we think about our environment for the elementary, we have a soft start, as you know. So that's at 50% of the student body. So the classrooms I were in today, that's about 8 to 10 kids per class is what was in there. We also tried to provide some guidance for art, music, and our PE teachers. So examples of what that might look like. So when do I sanitize materials? How do I do that? What materials do I sanitize? How long do they need to sit? So there's consistency for those specials teachers across all buildings as well. And we worked with our teacher leaders to develop that and push that out to teachers. There's also student supports in place just for safety. So some of the things that I saw, like there are number dots on carpet. So normally at the elementary level, students would line up at the door. Your line would come back to about here because they're kind of going to be all over each other. There are little dots that literally go almost around the entire classroom, around the perimeter, for students to stand on so that they can stay away from each other. I saw some kindergarten students today, and they were walking with their arms out in front of them to make sure that they're not bumping up to the people in front of them. So there are arrows and dots in hallways, as you've probably seen if you've been in any of the elementaries. We also ordered lanyards to kind of hold the face masks, because one of the things at the elementary level, those face masks are going to end up on the floor. Like if we sit together at lunch, I'm going to have yours is going to have mine, even though we might be 3 feet apart or the only people at the table, somehow that will still happen. So the kids have lanyards, and then they can just hook them onto their lanyard, and that way it doesn't get lost and it doesn't get mixed in with anybody else's. So there's a lot of things in place to kind of keep that. Our desks are facing one direction. If they're spread out as far as they can be spread out. A lot of furniture has been removed from classrooms. I think you've probably heard all that. And then obviously there's a lot of hand washing going on. So I was in a 3rd grade classroom today, and they were getting ready for lunch. So we had 1 girl in the bathroom, we had 1 boy in the bathroom. There were 7 kids in the class, and 1 at the sink in the classroom, and then that just left like 3 or 4 at their desks. So kind of really practicing and just allowing extra time for those safety pieces. In the lunchroom, they wash before they go in. They eat. They each have their tables, and they're marked. Tables are cleaned, and I have some photos of that too. And then they sanitize on their way out. So it's kind of like a little, on the way in, you clean. You're clean coming in. You eat. You sanitize on the way out. So some of the things that you see, so you can see in the bottom left, we have somebody cleaning the tables after the students ate. The upper corners, you can see there's like 1 child per table. The desks are spread out. Lots of furniture that's been removed. You see the middle picture of the dots on the floor. So a lot of times elementary students will sit on the floor, but that kind of keeps them separate. So just lots of visual reminders for our little ones that they have to kind of stay apart. So. And that is all I had. So questions?
So for the classrooms that are still using tables, when all the kids come back and we're not on a soft start,
Correct.
do we have partitions for those tables?
We do not have partitions for those tables. Students are placed on opposite ends of those tables, or like here and here. So if Barry and I were at the table, he would be on the far end and I would be on this end. So.
I walked through an elementary on Friday, and I saw a classroom that was going to be set up with tables like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I told, 1 on each end, but the table was maybe 2.5 feet long, and the kids are facing each other. So that's a concern for me. I think the pictures look great right now because there's half as many kids in them. I have great concern of what those rooms are going to look like when all the kids are brought back in 2 weeks. So that's, and then you mentioned the guidelines for specials. So are we still I like that you said that it's going to be consistent across buildings, because
Yep.
I've heard from just about every elementary that there's a lot of concern about how kids are rotating through classrooms and, not zooming in and out, not taking breaks between the rooms. Can you talk about the guidelines for specials just a little bit?
So, yep, every elementary building has expended the time between classes. So it used to be typically there was 5 minutes between classes. It's now 10. And so that allows a little bit more time for cleaning in between. And then also some of the things that they're doing, so for example, if I have an item in art that's not sanitizable, for example, a crayon or chalk or something like that, then it's only being used with that one class. So if my class is using it and your class comes in next, your class will not be using that material. So that's one of the things. If the material can be sanitized, so like in PE, we can sanitize a lot of things. If it's sanitizable, then we can do that. They could use it. But some of it might have to be, if it's like an odd size or shape, it might have to be sprayed down at night with those spray machines that they have by the custodial staff. So then it could only be used at one time per day, basically.
I will say that in visiting, I appreciate everything that's been put in place. And I saw the dots, I saw the arrows and the tape and the signs, and there's a stop sign on everything that they shouldn't touch before they use hands. So that, it's all great.
Caution tape, yep.
And I think that's exactly what should be happening. My concern remains what happens when there are 20 kids in a classroom and you can't do even 3 feet. Because I looked at the desks, they're not 3 feet apart.
Students will continue to wear their masks. Obviously, teachers will do their best to keep them apart. Creative ideas for instruction. I mean, so in the past, they might have done some partner things. Like that's probably going to be desk to desk. Like you're not going to see people face to face or knee to knee or anything like that in the past. Just to continue, I mean, just diligence, I think, on our teachers' part about making sure they're washing hands, using the sanitizer, wiping common touch points. I was in an elementary today. I walked into a classroom, walked out, and the custodial person there was wiping down the handles on the door with sanitizer. So I think there's just a lot of people doing a lot of things. Keeping them as far apart as humanly possible within that setting is the focus. I mean, they will do that.
When we meet again in 2 weeks, I'd like to see photos of what it looks like when all the kids are back in the rooms.
Yeah, I can keep providing updates, on a weekly basis for everybody as well.
Perfect.
And we're going to continue to try to social distance as much as possible. The mask requirements are in place. We know that we can't be perfect in the social distancing aspect of it, and but we will do everything we can to do as much as possible. But that's also why we gave families a choice of what their comfort level is for whether it's in person or online, because everybody has a different level of comfort as well. So I'm not saying what we have is perfect, but we'll continue to update that and do what we can to make sure the safety pieces are in place. And I'll just echo, as I walk through the buildings today, those pieces are being taken very seriously by staff and by students. I was extremely impressed with our students coming in today, wearing masks into the building before they even had to, wearing them throughout the day very successfully, using sanitizing as they are, as you mentioned, leaving the lunchroom and transitioning places. It was very, very impressive watching our staff and our students just, it looked very natural right away too. So those were real positives to see as we get started, and that routine will only get better, I think, for folks.
And they're explicitly teaching some of those protocols for our younger learners, basically every elementary, like reinforcing what is good hand washing. So not just, it doesn't mean stick your hands under and wipe them on your pants, it is, so, and giving them the time to do that.
Sure. And I don't mean to sound like Eeyore would be a great, I don't mean to sound like Eeyore, but I'm just hearing from parents that they're getting their welcome back videos, and the classroom setups they're seeing are not what they envisioned when we said we're doing social distancing. So I think that there's still some concern in the community that, and I agree with it, that, I was asked today, is there a minimum distance that we're guaranteeing in classrooms in the elementary, and I don't know that there is, because our baseline response is, we're doing social distancing to the best of our ability. And I don't think anyone really knows what that means outside of this room. And I'm not sure I fully know what that means. It
And
means we're trying our best, but, so there's just concerns from parents that did opt for in-person, but they thought it was gonna look different than it does. And I'm here to voice those concerns, because when 40 or 50 parents contact you about the same thing, I feel it's my responsibility to ask the question. So that's what I'm doing.
We will make sure we stay on top of it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any?
Barry, do you have any? I have some, but I
Okay.
don't know. Wait, Barry, do you have any? I'm gonna run through these really quick.
Sure.
Because I know we're pressed for time. Okay, so as far as partitions, like, was there a reason we didn't opt to do some plexiglass partitions in like elementary buildings? Is that just like cost prohibitive? Did we look into that?
We definitely discussed it earlier this summer. I don't remember the resolution of how it got to be where to not do that, to be honest.
Well,
So
I can speak
Carla's
a
more
little
part
bit
of
to
that
that. We
conversation
had
than I was, so I don't wanna
hours
guess on
worth
that.
of discussion about that. And just getting the plexiglass was a part of the issue.
Okay.
We couldn't physically put our hands on the plexiglass. Getting it from a vendor was difficult.
Okay.
As the principals,
Okay.
as we discussed that.
Okay.
that
I wonder
still the
if that's
case?
something that we can continue, everything at the beginning was like, there's a run on toilet paper, there's a run on
Yep.
deodorant, you know what I mean? Like, everything at first was kind of
Yep.
like that. And I wonder if it's just something that we can continue to work on.
Yeah, we could revisit that.
Because I went and had a manicure today, and, there's plexiglass between myself and the nail tech, and,
Yep.
I'm seeing it everywhere. I think it is a really, it's like it's like the mask in terms of the protection it provides. And again, there's only so much we can do to mitigate risk, but that is something that we could do that could be effective. And I know that we've heard from teachers and parents who are concerned about whether or not they can see, the face and all of that, but that may give you the ability to take the mask down for certain things that are important. Like if I'm teaching speech to a kiddo, they have to see my mouth. They have to understand how to make those, what do I need to do with my mouth in order to make those sounds? So I just think it's something we should continue to look into. If we have to put them in October, that's okay. You know what I mean?
I think that's a good point too, is this will continue to evolve as the year goes on. This is where we are to start, but certainly we can revisit that and look at the availability and potential scenarios where that would be most useful
Okay.
and beneficial for us too, so absolutely.
I wonder if we
look at
can
that.
look into it and talk about, like, hear what you guys find out at the next board meeting, make it a point to, again, I don't know if you're gonna be able to do it, but I just, let's look into it again. If we can't, we can't, but let's just keep working on it.
Supplies are coming back for things like that. They are more easily available than they were in June. And, as a reminder, pediatrics, CDC, they say masks are good, and if you're wearing a mask, then you can turn 6 feet into 3 feet. They don't say if you're wearing a mask, you can hug.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we still need to acknowledge that masks are a great tool, and they allow us to decrease from 6 feet when necessary, but it says with a mask, 3 feet is like 6 feet. It doesn't say if you're wearing a mask, don't worry about having partitions or keeping the kids separate. So I would like, if we can look into, just even if it's just on the tables where the kids are sharing a table and they're only 2.5 feet apart, I think that's something that would be worthwhile now that more supplies are back in stock.
So part of that, and this is just my other point, so all the desks are front-facing then in elementary buildings? Okay, so
Or facing the same direction.
facing the same direction?
Yes.
So
it
then
might
we're not doing small, 4 desks that face one another?
No, they're not doing those little pods.
Right. So part of me is just thinking, like, when we talk about plexiglass, like, if we can get plexiglass, you might be able to do that a little bit more, especially for littles. That's kind of important. You know what I mean? They're working in small group, but if I have plexiglass around everybody, we can move a little bit more toward the traditional learning, which provides, so many benefits. I mean,
Yes.
we know that the way we were doing it last year before the COVID hit was, you know what I mean, is far superior to what we're able to do given what we're working with now. But anyway, just
Yep.
Okay, I'm moving on. Okay, I know you said we're doing fast screenings. I
Correct.
wonder what we know about NWEA testing and ITBS, like what,
The elementary doesn't do NWEA.
since
so,
when?
2 years ago now, is
Several
that right?
years.
3 years ago?
This is my third year.
Well, I guess to be totally honest, I don't know that, so it would have been 2 years ago. Not even, because when Hannah was in 5th grade, she did it.
Fifth
Fifth grade,
grade,
yes.
well. Fifth,
Okay.
but fifth is intermediate now.
Okay, so intermediate will still be
Yes.
doing NWEA?
Yes.
Is there a reason we're not doing NWEA at the elementary level? I guess I missed that memo.
Because of FAST.
Because of FAST.
Yeah.
So does
FAST
FAST,
essentially replaces it, and then the cost and time of so many assessments.
Yes.
Right.
To take away from instructional.
But FAST is very, very different from NWEA. I mean, that's a completely
Absolutely.
different test. So it's hard for me to imagine
So-
that FAST replaces NWEA.
Just in terms of like the loss of instructional time. So if we did,
Okay.
we did a FAST, we do typically, so from first on above, so kindergarten, first to early reading.
Okay,
First through fourth does A reading as well.
Okay.
And then we add the math one in, and they have different ones by grade levels. And then if, on top of that, if we added in NWEA on top of that.
It's just too
It
much.
was just a lot.
so then are you gonna do ITBS, when does that start? What grades?
Typically, third is
Third,
when that
okay.
starts.
And we're still doing that?
We have to, yes.
Correct, okay,
That-
okay.
That's not till the
Yes.
springtime, so we'll see.
Yes,
a
it's
little
not
bit
till
sometime.
spring.
Right,
So we didn't do
absolutely.
it last year, right.
And we didn't do it last year? I
No.
guess we didn't do it last year
You
because we
weren't
weren't there. Oh, geez, that's gonna be fun,
Correct.
looking at that data for the next couple of years. It's gonna be all skewed.
And they changed it the previous couple of years as well, so it's made it.
Yeah,
I
the-
know,
hard to do
it's
anything
new, I know, it's a
longitudinal
mess.
with it.
Oh, geez, oh, geez. My husband would have fun with that. Okay, what is the lunch cafeteria situation? Like, are they sitting right next to each other? I'm
So-
envisioning the cafeteria. I know there's gonna be less
They
students
have
in there.
assigned seats.
Okay.
So when, the one I was in today, they had like table tens on the table. And so like at the particular one, it said like the child's name and the class that they were from. And there was one child per table today. So
When we're talking about tables, what are we talking about?
lunch tables?
Well, no, I know that, but what is one lunch table? Is it like, I can't
Oh.
imagine a lunch table off the top of my head. Does it have
It's
squares? I mean, I know what a
No,
lunch table is, but when you say one table, I'm struggling with that concept because there's no way you're going to be able to these tables are kind of huge.
So, there was one, they had one child, because one class eats at a time.
Oh,
So they've
okay.
extended lunch
Just
and
one?
so forth. So like when I was in there today, there was literally like 8 kids eating lunch. They each had their own table, and they were all faced the same direction, and they had their name tag on. When they
Oh.
left, they entered from one side, left from the opposite side.
Right.
Then the table was wiped
Right.
clean.
Yeah.
And then the table tent was changed, and then the next child came in. So when they come every day, they'll have assigned seats.
So how much distance between would you?
Oh, today,
Let's talk about in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so
let's just
in-
double. What
even
is
in
it
2
today?
weeks, I would say at least, in the one I was in today, like 3 to 4 feet
Okay. Okay.
is what I saw.
Okay.
Yeah, like it was
Okay.
7 to 8 feet today.
Okay.
But, I mean, probably in 2 weeks, it'd be 3 to 4 in that setup.
Okay. Fantastic. The last thing I have to
But
ask
I don't know
about-
if all, so I will say, I don't know if they're all set up that, like,
What school were you in?
I was at Bowman
No, the other ones I saw
Okay.
today were more, about every second or third seat, there was a student
Okay.
spread out that way, but it was either
But
one
they're all
class or
facing the
one
same
grade level.
direction?
They were not, but they were staggered, so.
Oh, okay,
they're
so
not
nobody's
straight
sitting
across from you.
directly.
Correct.
like this
Okay.
is-
Yep.
Okay,
So I think that all the lunch tables are probably a little bit different, so like, so like what I said, I don't think you can blanket that.
okay.
kind of
And
stuff.
so they're wearing a mask as they go through the line and taking it off
Yes.
once they sit down in their seat? Okay,
That makes-
fantastic.
Yep.
Then behavior data. You said that would be housed in the
Yep.
DOE's
Mhm.
warehouse? What
Yep.
is that?
So like if, for example, student attendance and behavior, so like if oh, I might need a little help on this, Lisa. So like they have, if a student gets in trouble, like are sent to the office, if it's a
Majors or minors?
or minor, not a minor, just a major is recorded in Power School, correct? Okay.
So, yeah, so the data, we will have the top 3 majors for the reasons why.
Can you give me an example of what a major would be?
Physical.
Okay.
Yeah. And then possible cases. So thinking of like PBIS, where we need to know like the reasons why as well as where. Where are you having the most conflict? So we get
So then you could, basically, then you could triangulate that data between their academic data. So students who have, so like if I'm constantly, what's my ELA data say in comparison to my attendance? I mean, I don't see us really using the behavior quite so much, at least in the academic side, but I do see like the attendance would be more informative
Okay.
for us. So of my students who are not at benchmark, what percentage of time are they attending? Like,
Okay.
and is that maybe the cause? So is it not that they don't know, it's just that they've just not had the opportunity to learn?
Okay. Okay. I just was kind of curious. All right, that's it. I'm done.
One more clarifying question on lunch, since you brought it up. You said one class is eating at a time,
That's what I saw
or one
today.
grade? Because I've been
I
told it's
saw-
one grade
Typically,
level at
it's
a
one
time.
grade level. I don't know what their schedule was today.
I don't know what their schedule was, but it looked, and maybe some kids had left for recess already when I was in there, but it looked like one class to me.
Okay, because I've been told it'll be by grade level,
Typically, it's one grade level.
which would
Typically
be
by
much
grade
more
level.
than 8 or 16 kids at a
Was
time.
there a reason that we didn't have kids at the elementary level, like eating in their classrooms?
Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit this summer. Essentially, our lunchrooms are a good size, and we can spread kids out better in that situation and clean better in one location than trying to spread out and clean the entire classrooms as well, especially transporting food back and forth.
Okay.
So especially with our new buildings opening up and number of students that are no longer there, we're able to spread out our lunchroom schedules quite a bit, and we'll control that better than having kids all in their classroom again. So.
Cool. That's good.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Cricket has questions.
No. Perfectly fine.
Well, good evening. Hi, I'm Erica Roush. I'm the middle level director, which includes intermediate this year. So I'm super excited about the opportunity to kind of serve 5, 6, and 7, 8. And just, I don't know if the crickets now are a
Yes.
sign of, like
Yes.
they're done listening.
They're
I
there.
don't know, but we're going to go on anyway. So, before I get started, I was telling Shannon earlier, I probably spent way too much time today out in the buildings, but the reality of the 5, 6 buildings now being built and real, and the students in there, everything that we've seen on design and going through the whole phase, it was kind of a little bit surreal. So it was awesome opportunity, and I feel bad that we can't get more of the public in to see it, and hopefully as the year goes on, we'll be able to get people in those buildings and see the learning spaces. So I will do my best tonight to portray to you what I was able to see today, not only at the 5, 6, but also at the 7, 8. So this I'm going to look like I'm copying elementary a little bit, but when we think about our academic priorities, this will be the same intermediate and at the middle school. We have those same priorities, kind of, I would say K-12, and that is, again, grade level content has to be our academic priority. However, again, knowing that the learning fourth quarter was not mandated, except for at the high school level, it is important that we go back and identify those critical standards that may have been missed during fourth quarter and pay attention to those. And part of that is like you start to think about, especially in math, and when you get into the upper level of math, it's really important that none of those critical skills are missed, because that is a building block to those next level of math. And so I think probably our math teachers, especially when you get up into the middle level, they're very sensitive to those needs, and especially for some of those students, because we start advancing students in math at this level, it is really important if we've got students taking pre-algebra, algebra, and geometry prior to high school, that all of those pieces are there. So we again spent time in May. We have a spreadsheet also where teachers identified what are those critical standards that are typically covered during fourth quarter, and then the teachers have access to that spreadsheet so that they can go back and revisit. And again, kind of like what Carla said, we can't stop instruction right now and go back and teach fourth quarter because we also have to pay attention to this year's priorities as well. And so how do we roll that in? How do we go back and assess and make sure kids haven't missed critical pieces? And if they have, how do we go back and reteach those? And so again, those are all conversations that teachers have been able to have during the 9 days of collaboration prior to the start of this year. So then thinking about professional learning that has happened, and I kind of threw in the coffee beans because we needed caffeinated teachers because we did put a lot on their plates. And I know I heard kind of some of your sensitivity to the amount of learning that we gave to teachers during the 9 days. And part of it, it's difficult when you try to put all your PD days at the beginning of the year. And knowing that we don't have those days now built in the rest of the year, like what's important to front load, how do we set them up for success? We know there's lots of things that are different for them. And so the balancing of all of that, I think, was critical. And hopefully we did an okay job in that balance. So part of it is just the content team and collaboration. And I know I heard, I think, some comment about 5, 6 teachers and the addition of some content areas, especially our 6th grade teachers did have a new content area that they've had to take on and do some learning. And so we were sensitive to that and allowed time for them to do some of that sharing in that content. And so spent time allowing them time to look at what does that Unit 1 instruction look like, what are those standards that will be assessed, and then how do we share and collaborate. And so Schoology really has become a nice platform now to be able to put that learning and be able to share that. So not only will it be a good student tool, it's a good teacher tool. And so finally we have a place where we can put folders together and teachers can share their content and teachers can have access. So they've spent a lot of time at both the intermediate and the middle school starting to put those folders together for that content sharing. And so that's been a plus because before, again, you have teachers that have different folders. Some use OneDrive, some used Google, and then they were good about sharing amongst themselves, but then you get a new teacher on board and then you have to figure out, okay, who has the sharing rights and how do we get that? This will all house in Schoology and we'll be able to share that very seamlessly now and be able to put our content together there. Student success, again, Carla talked about this as that data warehouse. This is from the Department of Ed. So our 5th and 6th grade teachers also administer fast testing, and our data is housed there. Again, the academic and the behavior and the attendance piece is there. And so that is a new piece that was new learning for our teachers because we will have to track our interventions in this student success this year to be able to see kind of what that intervention data looks like. Lexia, I know you've heard about this in the past, and this is Core 5 is the piece that we use for online literacy, kind of supplemental instruction for 5th grade, and then Power Up is the 6th grade version. And so part of this is, as the intermediate building, there's some things that 5th grade will be doing that look a little bit different than 6th grade, and then hopefully as time goes on, we'll start to blend some of that so that it doesn't look so different between the 2 grade levels. But that's just part of the makeup of Lexia, that it is 2 different programs based on those grade levels. And the one thing, so we did bring the Lexia rep in, and so there was some professional development from Lexia with the teachers at the 5-6. It does provide some really good instructional materials for teachers, so not only does it provide an opportunity for students to do some online literacy instruction at their level, It also gives some really good teacher materials for them to pull together some small group instruction and to be able to monitor student progress. And then Schoology was new learning. God, I had too many O's there for a minute. In that learning management system, and honestly, our teacher leaders did an awesome job of leading that instruction. So they were the ones who kind of spent time this summer taking on the learning of Schoology and then coming back and being able to share that with teachers. And then even over the weekend, as I monitored email and kind of watched what was happening, kind of 5/8. The learning didn't stop over the weekend. There were still videos being produced and sent out to teachers for tips and tricks with Schoology and how to put things together. Teachers were sharing kind of their new learnings with each other, and so it's ongoing learning, and they seem excited about it, so I think it'll be a good tool for them. And then BenQ, and so the classroom interactive monitors that are in the 5-6 buildings. So every classroom, instead of having kind of the overhead projector, has, I don't think we have one in this room, but just the big kind of TV, I think they're like 50-inch.
Jerry, is
How
that
many?
what you,
75, I don't know, they're huge.
Jerry, is that what you had in that one time that you're, okay, that's what I thought.
So the 5-6 classrooms, each classroom has that big display monitor that's interactive for their classroom, and it's on wheels. And so really that could go anywhere within the classroom. So you can create a small group of instruction, you can do large group instruction, kids can use it for their presentations or their small group. And then also in each of the neighborhoods, there's one out in the neighborhood to be used either in that collaboration room in the neighborhood or out in the large area. And so we had the rep, she was here, spent a day in the district, actually a day and a half, because I think she spent some time with Jerry, and was able to kind of scratch the surface. She said there's the possibilities and the applications are tons that can happen, so she gave them enough to feel adequately prepared to start today with students. And then again, that's another thing that the TICs and the coaches within the building are exploring, and so had spent some time exploring and started using even before our rep was here. So my guess is she'll be back again later when teachers are ready for some more with that as well. Whoosh, that was a lot, right? That's why they needed the caffeinated drinks to help them. And then if we go and talk about intermediate environments, so that kind of says space in the background, that's kind of the big thing we need to think about right now is space. So student supports for safety. So at the 5-6 level, students are doing the soft start as well, with 50% of the students here for the first 2 weeks. Again, they had directional signs, they had the desk spacing, and so I was able to watch lunch today, and again, much like what Shannon talked about, students were spread out, they were kind of diagonal. I don't know that there were any more than 4 at a table of 12, and so they were spread out. Now, thinking about in 2 weeks, when students all come back, at least at the intermediate level with the administration there, when I spoke to them, they have plans. So they will expand spaces outside of their lunchroom. So if you think about the new buildings, when you walk in, that big hallway there by the gym and the main office, it's huge. And then if you remember, we have that super cool seating space that's kind of built in the hall area. So that would provide additional seating. Kids could spread out down that hall and still have plenty of walkway space and spread out for lunch. And then there's also that project room right there as well that has tables and chairs. So they're already thinking about, we know we can't put them all in the lunchroom. We want them to all kind of be able to eat about the same time. Where else can we anticipate extra space? So they're thinking about that, and they have a plan. They were also doing direct teaching of student expectations in the lunchroom. So I did get to see Mr. Orr, and he was, you know, here's what we do, here's what we don't do, here's how we're going to recess. And that was kind of cool to see recess with 5-6. Like, I think that was a good break for them as well. So that time to get outside, give themselves a little mask break. And so that was all happening during lunch. Then I was able to walk through, and again, those classroom spaces, those classrooms are nice sized, kids were very well spread out. I think again with that neighborhood concept and those extra classrooms that they have, again, I think that spacing and all the glass and you can see the kids, like I think it'll work out very well at that level. I'm trying to think what else I saw. I don't know, it was just awesome to see kids in the building. And it was the quietest I've ever seen a lunchroom ever, but they were still communicating. So it was good. And I guess I don't know for sure kind of K-4 what that looked like, but at the intermediate and middle school level, they had a grab and go lunch. So everything was packed in a bag. Kids picked it up, they went and sat, they were eating, kind of get in line, just kind of continuous feed. So they seemed happy. I asked them, like, do you like, how's lunch? Does it look okay? Or they seemed good with that. So.
Are they not doing hot lunches?
It was a hot
Oh.
item. It was some kind of sandwich, but it was all just
Okay.
pre-bagged. So they're not going through and scooping, like,
Right.
so no salad bar, no what you're
Oh.
typically used to seeing. So it's not probably as cool as what they were anticipating.
Yeah, that's a
but-
bummer for them.
Yeah, but I think
But I
there still
understand.
will be some choice, but not quite the choice they had before.
Okay.
So, all right. There you go. There's some locker area, classroom space, and the fact that like all of those desks too are individual and can be spread out. Oh, there's the big BenQ board. You can see the monitor.
Mhm.
It's large. Okay. Questions 5-6, or can we scoop on to middle school and get me at the end, or?
Just keep
All
on
right,
going.
keep on going. All right. So middle school, again, you're going to see the exact same priorities. So if you have questions about those, we can ask at the end. Professional learning, again, there was a little bit of our professional learning. We were spread out. Oh, somebody covered my words with a picture. Okay. That's all right. I think when I transferred it, like some of my print turned out white. So let me talk a little bit. Very similar in the 7 and 8. As far as their professional learning, they had time again for team collaboration, talking about through that Unit 1 instruction. And part of that is, so the difference between 5, 6, and 7, 8. So 7, 8 is going to look like the high school for that first quarter. And so kids are attending face-to-face 50% of the time. And then also then when they're not face-to-face, they're at home online learning. So the difference is there's no day off of instruction. So every day is new instruction at the 7 and 8 level, much like high school. So if you're at home, you're logged on, you're attending, just like you would be there face-to-face. So that's kind of that difference, K-6 versus 7-12. And so part of the professional learning that teachers had to work at the 7-8 is how do I teach both virtually and face-to-face at the same time? And so they spent a lot of time collaborating and having discussions about that. So part of what I challenged them to do is really look at that Unit 1 instruction and thinking about the Unit 1 assessments, which go back to those priority standards. Can you assess and teach to those standards online equally as the same as face-to-face? And then if you cannot, how do you adjust what it is you're assessing, and how does that need to look different? And so giving them opportunities to think about that instruction and to have that collaboration time. So they had to spend time thinking about that differently. The other thing that we provided all of the middle school teachers is the mics, so that when they are teaching, again, it's easy for those online students to be able to hear them, and then also the dot cameras so that they can share virtually as well as in class. And part of the discussion I know those teachers had were, you know, who do I teach to? Do I teach to those kids who are right here face to face? Do I spend my time thinking more about those kids that are online? And I think there were different, there's different philosophies and different ways that teachers are approaching that, but I don't think either one is wrong, because I think essentially they're paying attention to all those kids, and so they're going to work through that and they're going to learn. The one thing, there are some middle school teachers that do have an advantage. So if you remember fourth quarter last year, the high school, because they continued and gave students credit, we have teachers at the middle school in both math and foreign language that teach high school courses. So we had some middle school teachers that had to teach and give credit just like the high school teachers did last spring. And so they've been good too about in those team meetings, given assurance to those middle school teachers, we can do this, we can help you. We've done the online teaching portion of it, and so there's been good collaboration that way as well. And the middle school environment, that was kind of eerie a little bit today because it was the quietest I've ever seen a middle school ever. But the kids, again, very well behaved. They had their masks on. They were following the directional signs. There's the arrows. There's the stations with hand sanitizer throughout the building in all the right spaces. The open pod areas at like Oak Ridge are full of furniture, so it causes students not to be able to kind of hang out. So really those open spaces are meant to be really just traveling hallway spaces. Again, they have great plans of how they're putting students in the lunchroom, and then again, if more students come back after first quarter, if we're all back full in session still, how will we continue to be safe in the lunchroom? And again, the direct teaching of student expectations are happening there through their PBIS and their OCM time. So again, not leaving it up to chance that kids have to figure out what it is they're supposed to do. It's direct teaching to those students and those expectations. And the other thing is like they're carrying their backpacks. So they're not using lockers at the middle school either, just so they're keeping their items with them. And so it's just kind of funny, all these things that you spent years telling kids not to do. You know, don't cover your face, don't cover your head, don't put your backpack away, don't carry all your stuff, and it looks different, but they're handling it very, very well.
So are there no
Whoops.
lockers at the middle level then, or middle school?
They are not, I mean, the lockers obviously are there, but they're not using
They're
them.
not using them, okay.
I have a question about the tech for the teachers in teaching both online and in person at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
All the pictures I've seen so far, they've got the little Linn-Mar laptops.
Mm-hmm.
Are we providing teachers with like, I can just imagine that if they had a second screen so they could have the classroom here and all the faces of the kids here, it would be so much easier to interact and to know what's going on than trying to watch it all on this tiny screen. Have we done anything like that? Can we do something like that to make it easier? I've heard from teachers that that would be amazing, and I know a couple of them have bought their own second monitor to try and make that work, but that seems like something that we could do to make it a little easier in the classroom to monitor. You know, I mean, most of their kids every day are going to be on that computer.
Right.
I think it would be easier if they could see everything. That's really, everything else looks great. I saw one of the makeshift roundabouts on Friday. I think it's,
You know, roundabouts can be everywhere now. So
Yes.
even
Now we
in
have them in
schools.
our schools, so.
And I haven't heard, I guess, I haven't heard teachers asking about the second monitors, but maybe the admin in those buildings have, or maybe tech has, I don't know. So yeah, that is certainly something.
I just think that'd be a really great resource that if
have
we
a
could, it would make it
conversation about.
easier for them to do what we're asking them to do.
I
Yes.
agree. I agree. I think that would make it a lot easier because they're, you know, pulling up content that they're trying to, they're sharing their screen. but I also want to see who's talking. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that everybody is there and they, you know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
you've got,
And
the chat box is always
Right,
going to be on the
right.
same screen with your faces.
and you can't keep all, you know, you're
Yeah.
going to see 5 of them at a time.
Right.
So
I just think that would
don't
be
think
a
it
really-
is a bad idea at all. And I don't know what the cost of that
Hopefully
would
they've
be,
talked to their
but
administrators about that, and we could look into options for that too. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's a
I
conversation.
bet if
we
we,
brought up
if we
or not.
asked teachers if they wanted that,
yeah,
they
they
would.
would be chomping at the bit for it.
So it's just, I mean,
If we
I have,
dig in.
I don't know what I can't sit at a person's desk if they have one monitor. I can no longer function that way.
Yes.
So, I just know that it helps me immensely when I'm doing all this. Here's my people, here's what I'm presenting. I just think that would be amazing if we could provide that for teachers, since we're asking them to do this hybrid, all-at-once teaching scenario.
I'm sure we'll have many things come up like that as we dig into this farther,
Yeah.
that as they figure out what's the best way to operate, be glad to look at it.
That makes sense, and I hadn't thought
Yeah,
about
that's a
that.
great
So
idea.
thank you.
It just,
It's a
I'm
really
just-
great idea.
yeah,
When you do
I think
it all
that
the
would be
time,
helpful.
think of yes things. I would just like to add that I appreciate that you have people supporting each other and all of that, but I do believe in all of the communications I received that these online teachers, especially 5th and 6th, who are being asked to teach things that they maybe haven't taught for 20 years or never, that allowing them to departmentalize or to work with a buddy system or something, I don't know, thinking out of the box of how we can make it better for them, I think is really, really important. And I believe that some of them are feeling somewhat like the quote I had that stuck with me a while, is that they feel like they're drowning. And I don't want to hear those kinds of things from many, and I heard it from many people. If I just heard it from 1 or 2, that'd be one thing, no. And I know that everybody's doing their best, but we cannot forget that there are people who are totally stressed out there. And to sit back and say everything's wonderful, it maybe isn't. So we just have to keep digging and asking questions and promote everyone talking to their supervisors or whoever, and have people open to those ideas, so.
And that's a topic we've actually, Bob and I have talked about as well, as far as for the 5th and 6th grade levels. And those are things they need to talk to the administrator about and work through as we continue to evolve and.
That's the
look through
appropriate
everything.
place to
Yep.
start, and but it needs to happen, and then people need to listen to them, so.
Well, and I think that you make a really good point, and I've thought about this a couple times, that I think we need to remember that people can feel multiple things at the same time. So teachers can be really excited about coming back and seeing their kids, and simultaneously be really nervous about the virus or really concerned about being asked to teach them. Doesn't mean they're not happy to be there. It means that I think we need to acknowledge that they can feel all of these things at the same time, and that we should try and address what we can in different ways.
I think that's true of all of our staff, to be honest.
Yes.
Teachers, administrators, kitchen staff, bus drivers. I think there's absolutely mixed emotions of very excited to be back, but also concerned about
Yeah.
what this looks like as well. No doubt about that. That is, with the current situation we're in, I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. And we have to be all very respectful of everybody's personal situation they're going through with COVID, or the derecho damage and the personal impact there. We're seeing all kinds of different emotions from people, staff-wise, family-wise, student-wise. We have to be tuned into that as much as possible this year, even more than ever. Completely agree.
I just want to make sure we don't misinterpret a teacher's concerns as being, well, you're not on board with being here, because I don't believe that's the case in with anyone. I think that they want to be here. I think they want to do the best job they can, and then they're asking questions and raising concerns because they want to be able to do the best job that they can.
And I
Absolutely.
would not disagree with you. I have not, everyone I've talked to has been so positive, but I think part of it is, we do a lot of planning, and then you have to plan for Plan B and then Plan C, and I think even now, thinking, when will that rug maybe be pulled out and everything we think is going to be normal isn't normal again, and so I think that is difficult. Sandra, if I can just ask a clarifying question, is that, just so for myself, so I can think about planning, is that teachers, thinking about the teachers that are in person at the 5-6 who now, like 6th grade teachers who have 2 contents to teach, or are we thinking more about those teachers who are all online trying to do all
Mostly the
content
ones
areas?
I've heard from are the online
Online,
people
okay.
who have like 50 students assigned,
Yeah,
and they're
okay.
overwhelmed, trying to do a really good job
Yes.
in their position,
Okay.
because Linn-Mar teachers are the best.
Yes.
So they don't ever want to do anything halfway.
No.
So that's what a lot of them are experiencing, is they're not feeling like they're able to do well, and they just want to.
Thank you, that helps.
I'd like to push back a little bit. You know, I can appreciate that, you know, the people that you're talking to have these positive attitudes, and I'm sure many do. But Sandra made a point about, you know, these teachers that she's talking about may not be saying that, but they're feeling that. And I think it's a mistake to think that teachers are just going to feel totally 100% comfortable going to their administrators and saying, you know, I can't do this, or, you know, I'm struggling. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. You know, I think you have to create a culture in which teachers feel comfortable sharing the truth as they see it, their reality. And I don't think they all do.
I would agree with that.
And so
I've heard
how
from
do
a
we
lot.
reach out? You know, just the point about the monitors. You know, people may not even be thinking about what would make my job easier. But, you know, if we open up dialogue in such a way that we really want your feedback, you know, we want to know so that they feel more comfortable, you know, talking about the negative, sharing the negative. We have to. Otherwise, we risk, you know, the academics not being as, you know, as up to standards as they usually are, but also, you know, thinking about the social, emotional health of the teachers. You know, we don't want to burn them out.
Correct.
I just think if we just think of the mental health for everyone involved, and teachers are part of that it's very hard and they want to do their best. So thank you, Erica.
Well,
I didn't
can I
mean
just
to
ask-
just direct it just to you. It's in general.
Can I just ask one question? I wanted to ask, well, I guess two, really quick. If we could have an update on Lexia soon, I would be really interested in hearing that. I know
Okay.
there was like an experiment that was sort of going on at Wilkins last year that Nathan came in and talked about, and it just would be good to see, like, what is that data showing us? You know, is Lexia, does
keep
it
in mind how
continue to
you
be a
ended last
useful
year, but-
tool?
yep.
You know what I mean? And you know, what did we end up concluding with what happened at Wilkins, the
It's
little
benefit
experiment?
or not.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just hear a little bit more about it. And then I just wanted to, you hit on, particularly with math
Yes.
students, that, you know, they've lost content from last year from not being there. And you also said that, you know, teachers couldn't really like go back and start there because they've got to get this content in. And so then my question is, how far behind will students be at the end of this year? Because they're trying to catch up, and it just seems like then you're not going to be able to make up for that entire quarter in one school year. So how long is it really going to take in order for kids to be where they should be?
So kind of, I guess even the conversation we had at Teaching and Learning. So thinking about that, and that is kind of why we've gone back to like, what really are those critical skills from fourth quarter? And I know Carla talked a little bit about fractions, and probably almost every upper grade level, fractions comes fourth quarter. And so those pieces, being mindful of that and making sure that not only can we start fractions now, but we're going to continue to talk about fractions throughout the year. So I think we've talked about, we probably need about, it would be nice to have 6 weeks of additional instruction to be able to kind of make up for the 9 weeks we lost last year. But we know that's not possible. And we know we don't want to kind of start this year 6 weeks into the quarter. So again, it is a task for teachers to be able to make sure they find the right places to connect that instruction from the year prior, and then even to be able to go back. So like, you know, thinking about the middle level, you know, we have those assessments that are all aligned to those standards, and so being able to, how can we pull some of those questions from those assessments? Because students may have gotten, you know, there may be students who have more of that learning than we realize, and so we don't want to stop instruction for all kids to teach if they already have that knowledge. And so again, being able to go and find those ways to assess those standards and then catching those students who need that. I would like to think that we're not going to have any student behind by the time we get to the end of this year. I don't know that that's the reality, and we don't even know what this year will look like.
Right.
So then that takes me back to just a little bit about what you said with Lexia. The one thing that we have to keep in mind is so much of our assessments stopped after March. And so a lot of the data that we have is winter data.
Right.
And so it is going to be difficult maybe even to look at that Lexia data right now and say, what did we learn? I don't know if we have enough information. So we have reset all of the Lexia assessment to reassess kids now and get a new starting point for this year, just so teachers really have a good idea of where they're at instructionally right now. And then, you know, they'll be able to go back and see, like, or did students continue to grow or not. The other piece I didn't talk about, and I know Mark's going to run out of time, but he might like that, I don't know. Just at the 5, 6, and middle level, we will have NWEA 5-8. So that will give us right away here, as early as this week. I think they're going to start assessing that information instructionally where students are at, so we can start. 6th grade will have the FAST data, so we'll have that as another indicator. And then just so that in case you're hearing this out there, we will assess all 6th grade students for pre-algebra as well. So we're not forgetting this class of kids. Typically that is all done in the spring, and we just didn't have access to students. So, and then the other piece with that, if for those students who are all online, we will find ways to make sure if they're interested in that opportunity that we have ways to assess them as well. So just know that those pieces are not forgotten. So those will be happening in the next couple of weeks as we get those assessments started.
I'd like to,
Can I just add one thing? Sorry.
yeah.
We can't think of kids as behind, and I know we've even talked about that. They're just where they're at. I mean, we have college kids right now that didn't finish their senior year, and maybe didn't get all their graduation credits. They're not going back and having to take, you know, college stats class that they signed for in 12th grade. So, you know, we do that every year. We just have to think about taking kids where they are and moving them forward, knowing that, you know, they're really not behind. Thankfully, unthankfully, but, you know, if all of us were in this situation, it's not just Linn-Mar kids that didn't have school in the spring. So I think that's what we really try to frame with moving forward is, here's all the stuff we need to do. We're not further behind or further ahead than anybody else. We just need to take all our kids where they're at right now and move them forward as they go through June, whatever our last day of school is, and then start that same mindset next year and pick them up where they are and keep moving forward. I just don't want us to have that deficit mindset of behind, because they're not really behind anything. They're where they're at, and we're ready to, you know, pick up that workload and take them forward. So.
Well, I
appreciate
agree
that.
with you. I agree with you in a lot of ways, and I know that everybody's in the same situation. I get that. But if I took an pre-algebra class last year, and I'm moving into algebra this year, and I didn't get that last quarter of instruction, I may struggle, and my grades may not reflect what I would typically, you know, get as a grade if I had received that instruction. If I'm playing that catch-up, that's very difficult, especially when we're talking about sequential courses that really do build upon one another. And it's just something I think we need to be aware of, because we may be missing things, and now we're pushing them ahead, but they may not have some of that core knowledge that they need. So I absolutely get it. I know we're all in the same spot. I just think this has got to be something we're aware of, because the reality is that for kids in middle school who are taking these high school courses, and for kids in high school, these have real consequences for them. You know what I mean? When they're applying for college. So just something that I understand where you're coming from, but I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to sugarcoat the reality.
And
Well,
I think
that I agree. We want to meet kids where they are and help them move forward, but we've been talking a lot about standards. Each grade has standards that if you're on track to move to the next set of standards, this is what you meet by the end of the year. So I think the better way to frame the question is, how close are our students to being on standard? to being where we want them to be when we move them to the next grade. And I think that right now, I don't think it's fair to ask if you think we're going to be behind at the end of the year. I don't think it's fair to ask that today because you haven't done the fast assessments. You don't know where kids are sitting yet. I think this is a better conversation to have in a couple of weeks when you've started assessing the kids and we've been back and you've had a chance to see them. And then just give us a touch point of, you know, we've started our assessments. We kind of see this is where our students are falling. I think that's a better question to ask. But I think we need to fall somewhere in the middle of saying, are they going to be behind and take them where they are and just keep moving them forward? I agree with both. We have set standards and we need to make sure that we're helping our kids meet those standards so that when we move them to the next grade, they're ready for that. I think this year we're going to be playing catch up and we all understand that, but I think we don't want to be playing catch up in 2 more years. We don't want to start the next several years every year going, okay, we still have to make that progress and they're still not quite on standard. We need to figure out the middle ground in this conversation.
And that's exactly why I've done the prioritization of the standards from last spring and into this year as well to embed that. I want to be careful, make sure we don't run out of time for Mark though as well,
I
because
think we should
the high
move
school
on.
piece is just as important, and he's probably sitting over there thinking, it's okay, I can just sit here quietly. But I want to make sure we don't, we're already pushing that time already. I want to make sure he has
Thank
time.
you.
Well, and I think this has to do a lot with high school. I mean, that's-
Yeah,
it does.
you know,
I mean,
so
what
it's a
I'm saying
perfect
touches on-
segue.
So answer all the questions.
Go
Mr.
for it,
Hutchison, and
Mark.
do
But it
right.
sounds like we should mark our calendars for 2 weeks to come back.
I think that would be fantastic, I really do. Pencil it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
All right, excuse me, Mark Hutchison, and High School Director of Teaching and Learning. And I want to thank you all for giving us a chance to catch you up on where everybody's at. Thank everybody here for all their work on getting the school ready to go this year. And I also want to thank a lot of people in our building and the buildings below the high school, but our administration has done a tremendous job getting things ready. Our teachers have put in a tremendous amount of work. And I don't, you know, to kind of piggyback on some of the conversations here, I do think there's a lot of stress with teachers, but I think the stress really comes from the fact that they really want to do well. You know, they want to do their best for kids. They don't want to let them down, you know, and they want to have them ready for that next level. And at the high school, we kind of bump up against it. You know, college and career is the next thing. Kids need to have a certain level of algebra, you know, when they get to college. They need to have a certain level of understanding how to write and how to read college level material and those kinds of things. And so there is that stress, and our teachers, you know, PK through 12, they have tremendous pride in what they do. They have tremendous pride in their ability to get kids ready for that next level. And so we recognize that, and it's clear that you all recognize that as well. And I think that's a real credit to our teachers. And it's why I think our Linn-Mar students are always very well served by our teachers, our staff, at all levels. I want to kind of go through the same different things that everybody else has, what our academic priorities are, what our professional learning has been like, and also what our school environment is. So high school academic priorities, you know, we teach a lot of different courses, and all of those courses lead to transcript credit. And on those courses, course credits awarded to students that demonstrate proficiency on course standards. So same kind of thing. You know, we've spent a lot of time at the high school level identifying what our priority standards are for each course. Most of our courses have anywhere from 6 to 10 priority standards, and those standards define what the course is all about. And so whether it's culinary basics, or whether it's English 3, or whether it's Algebra 1, every course is defined by standards, and students, of course, will work for those standards. They will achieve those standards. When they achieve proficiency on those standards, they'll receive course credit. And so nothing has changed with regard to that at the high school. Okay, we are still expecting a certain level of performance out of our students, whether it's in skills or not. Professional learning, this last 9 days, again, we've done a lot of the same kind of things that everybody else has done. We started off, and by the way, I don't know if you have access. Does everybody have access to this PowerPoint, or will this be shared later? You have access to it now?
Yep.
Okay, so this part, what did I do? Okay, this part right here, if you click on that, you can see what our professional development schedule is like. I think I gave everybody permission to that. We started off with COVID information, some planning discussions. So we got together in interdisciplinary teams and we talked about how our school was going to operate under all of the different needs of safety with COVID. We also spent an awful lot of time with the Grant Wood Continuous Learning Field Guide, best practices in online teaching and learning. We had time set aside for that, for teachers to work through that on their own. We felt like having had the fourth quarter under our belt last year, where we did an awful lot of online teaching, we learned a lot, okay? And this was a great supplement to that experience, helped us to see maybe some things that we could even do better. We spent a lot of time with Schoology. We have been working with Power School Learning, spent a lot of time transitioning to Schoology, a different learning management system, a lot of similar things, but not all the same, so we did have some learning with that. Universal design, making sure that our materials are accessible for all students. Just digital engagement strategies, sorry I got a comma there, which should be digital engagement strategies. We have a lot of time with different kinds of software types of programming that we can use to help engage the students. And again, the online teaching, it's difficult because it's harder to engage students, and that's one of the things that makes teaching work is, being able to get the students involved in the material. So it's very, very important that we learn how to do that digitally, so we spend a lot of time with that. We also spend some time with management applications, and those are different things like using Teams or using Zoom or using our earpiece microphones or using, let's see what else we have, our document cameras, those kinds of things. So management types of applications, we spend some time with that in our professional learning. Standards-based learning, standards reference grading. We have a lot of people that are moving to that this year. We had planned to move to that as an entire building. We still have some people that would like to do some points this year. That's great, but we felt like, in fact, one of the things about the fourth quarter that I think really helped us down this path is we realized that, it's less about the activity and more about the target, okay? So, the whole idea of, here's where the target is, let's go after it. There's 1,000 ways to get there, okay? And we learned that we didn't have to do all of the activities that maybe we were used to doing face-to-face in the classroom. There were other ways to do that. So that helped a lot, but we wanted to make sure that we were clear with a lot of our procedures, our policies, those kinds of things for the standards-based learning, standards reference-based. We spent some time with that. Trauma-sensitive classrooms, unconscious bias, community circles. This was all about the social emotional learning, and I got to give a shout out to Carla and Lisa, their teams for doing these things. The trauma-sensitive classroom, the community circles, Lisa's team worked with that, our counselors. That was a tremendous experience for them. It was also tremendous help getting ready for helping our students with the social emotional aspects of learning this year. I thought it was really, really well done. The unconscious bias session that Carla's group put together, again, that was, I thought that the group that provided that, they did a tremendous job. They were very engaging. I think our teachers really had a good time talking with one another about some tough topics, those kinds of things, and they really did a nice job leading them through that and how to do that with your students, have those conversations and be prepared for those kinds of things with students. So very, very, very well done. And then a lot of interdepartment, department, and course level work. We had departments were working on, vertical articulation types of things. Interdepartment, that was a lot of just the department, interdepartment types of planning around the COVID information, that sort of thing. And then the course level work, there was a lot of work around standards, weighting of standards, how to deliver the standards, both virtually and face-to-face. So a lot of that kind of thing. And then we also had, we had, I think it was about 68 hours of professional learning, and we had about 30 hours of that was devoted to individual teacher prep time. Plus or minus, we had some teachers that were involved in some different groups that took away from that a little bit. We had some teachers that maybe had a little bit more than that as well. I think it was probably similar at elementary, middle school levels. So, and then last thing, show you a few pictures of our professional learning, I guess, before I go to the last thing. This is our teachers getting ready. And you can see some different things there. You see some community circle work that they're preparing. You see some different kinds of presentations. This was over here. This is some teachers learning about using Teams and how to manage their classrooms with Teams. We had a lot of, this is Cheryl Klein was leading the group there. Dr. Gustafson was in on that. That was, I think that's Dave Sullivan up there, also in on that through Teams. And then you can also see all the buttons on the bottom with all the other people that were involved in that. A lot of our professional learning actually mimicked what we're planning to do with our students, which is kind of a two-channel type of instruction where we have face-to-face and we also have students out there in online learning or virtual land. Just very large classrooms, basically what it comes down to. But we were trying to deliver a lot of things in two different channels, and we learned a lot just even through our professional development about how to make that work well. Our high school environment. Obviously, there's going to be a big focus on student and staff safety. A lot of the things that the others have talked about, paying attention to student density, patterns of movement. The roundabouts are interesting. I was watching Dr. Gustafson was talking about, he had a video where he was showing kids how to go through the roundabout. The four
I wanna
corners
see
where they
that.
usually smash into each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
showed them how to, travel that and not smash into each other. I think they did it intentionally. So the patterns of movement, classroom procedures, changing our release time a little bit so it's more structured, that sort of thing. So a lot of focus on that. So that'll be different. The AB continuous learning, Erica talked about that a little bit. So we have an A group and a B group, but it's continuous learning. So the A group is learning on one day. The B group is at home, they're learning the same thing. And then the next day they just switch and we continue on with more learning. It's not the same learning. It's added on to the previous days. So now B is face-to-face and A is in the online environment. So that's the kind of environment that we have for our learning at the high school. The daily schedule has been adjusted. And it's been adjusted to accommodate synchronous learning and increased personal support. So we have basically shortened class periods, so 25 minutes for a skinny, 50 minutes or 55 minutes for a block, and that's different than our normal, 45 and 95. So that's been shortened, but we've also added a lot more RTI time at the end of the day so that we have a lot more RTI or MTSS, whatever you want to call it, where we have a lot more time for remedial work, for enrichment work. We also have time for social emotional support. And
Mark.
then also, question?
You said the
Yeah.
typical block time is 90 minutes,
Yeah,
and it's what now?
it's going to be, 55.
Okay.
All right, then we've got, that may not be right. No, that is right, 55 minutes. And then we have two-channel teaching, face-to-face and virtual, or asynchronous teaching and learning provided to students in all courses. So there are times that we'll have students that will be doing virtual learning at a time that is not the same as the class time, and that is by teacher design. But otherwise, then they will communicate that to students so that they're continuing to learn maybe at a time that's not the same class period. And that's, again, that's generally is going to be personalized for that. But we also have the synchronous teaching and learning, where we've got face-to-face instruction going on, and we've also got virtual learning. And a couple things with that. We bought a bunch of these devices, and I brought one. You know, I pass it around, but it's nothing you haven't seen before. But basically, what it does is it just allows teachers to hook this up. And what it's a Bluetooth. It Bluetooths to your computer. And the nice thing about it is a microphone. It's also got an earpiece so that you can hear. If you are engaging with students online in Teams and you're engaging with your class, there may be times that you want to move away from your computer. And so the computer actually has kind of a narrow audio field. So by using that, I'm able to go over here and I'm able to hear students online, and they can talk to me. I can talk to them. I can talk to my students in the classroom. I can do a chemistry experiment, okay, or I can write on the board in math. And then in addition to that, and this is something that we don't have just yet, but we soon will. So right now we have document cameras, but they were made, basically for documents, completely for documents. We are going to purchase some of these IP boats, and Jerry's team has helped us with that. By the way, Jerry's team needs a huge shout out because of all that they have done to prepare for this, to prepare for Schoology, to prepare for 5,500 new devices given out to kids, the new ones. That's not even talking about the one-to-one that we had in high school last year. Tremendous amount of work, and they've done a tremendous job with that. But they helped us to find this document camera, and it's not just a document camera. You can use it like that. You can, write a math problem out, and students can see it projected on the wall. They can see it online if you have it connected correctly. But you can also, if you need to, you can turn it, and it's got a much greater resolution. You can turn it, and you can work on a math problem on the board, so that kids at home can see that. Or you can, again, do the chemistry experiment, and kids can watch that at home. Or if you wanted to, you could actually turn it in such a way so that they could engage in discussion with the rest of the group on teams. It's not an easy thing, okay? I've tried to do it. I messed up with the document camera when I tried to do it with the staff. A lot of the other parts are working. It just is going to take some practice and some time. But I do think that our teachers, as challenging as it is, I think they're excited about the opportunities and the possibilities, and I think they've really, really prepared hard. And I can't give them enough credit for all that they've done, the difficult circumstances that this is. It's not easy to do this. Obviously it'd be easier to just base it or just online it. To do it in 2 channels is very, very difficult. And I know that they feel that stress and that pressure. They're doing a tremendous job with this. And again, I think an awful lot of all the work that they've done. So that's the high school portion of things, and we're bumping up against it. So any questions?
Anyone?
I just want to say that I've heard a lot of positive feedback on the unconscious bias and trauma sensitive, so I don't think that you were guessing on that. There was a lot of positive about that, so well done in that area.
And you'll get to meet those individuals here in a few minutes.
Yes.
I'd like to just comment to the 4 of you, especially in the whole leadership of the organization. Just listening to the 4 of you just tells me, as a board member, that the complete confidence that we have that everything is being completed, the great confidence we have that the safety of the kids, the education of the kids is the most important piece of the whole puzzle. And we are here to support you. We're happy with you and the whole leadership team. And just thanks for your time.
I just want to swing back really quick. Britt, I think you made a good point. It's perhaps not appropriate at this point to you guys aren't going to have answers on really where we're at, but I really do think that at the next board meeting, we should have some kind of information. I hope that we can talk a little bit about where the kids are actually at. It's kind of the big question.
I didn't mean not
I don't know that
appropriate,
we'll
I just
have
meant,
that
I think
information.
asking the question is okay. I just think it's too early to expect them to be able to answer
Right,
the question
which is
today.
fine.
Once we have that information, absolutely.
Okay.
But I don't know we'll have that by the next board
Okay,
meeting.
and if it's not,
confident we
then-
won't, but we
and
can
if it's
certainly
not, then
loop back
that's
to that
fine.
again.
Uh,
I would just I really would like an update on where the kids are academically when we know that, because I think, that's our starting point. I want to know what our starting point is.
We look forward to that information as well.
Okay.
So,
And as a teacher, I know it's going to take a while to gather all that,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
but eventually. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate all.
Thank
of
you
it.
for Thank you, all, guys. to all of you guys.
Thank
And-
you.
A lot of
and
good information.
Just want to say, thanks everyone for all you do. That's why we wanted to hear from you. Thank you, we appreciate it. And I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, Rachel?
Second.
Second, Britt. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.